In the mid-2000s, famous Red Sox pitcher Curt Schilling decided he wanted to start a video game studio. That studio became known as 38 Studios, in reference to Schilling's jersey number when he played for the Red Sox. Fast forward about 10 years to a planned MMO, acquiring big huge games, hiring major talents, getting a sizable loan from the state of Rhode Island, along with missing some of the payments for that loan, declaring bankruptcy, employees not getting paid, we were left with Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. To say this game's development cycle was crazy is a bit of an understatement, and I'm not really going to cover it in this video, but the YouTuber Matt McMuscles goes over it in his What Happened series. I highly recommend it. I'll link it in the description. It's absolutely insane. It even ended with a criminal investigation. It's nuts. On the bright side of things, we did get a pretty cool game out of it. The property was pretty much dead in the water after the game's release until 2018. At that point, THQ Nordic would purchase it and go on to release a poorly named remaster, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. This version of the game saw improvements such as increased graphics settings, slightly improved textures, improved HUD aspect ratios, reworked item drops, and an added difficulty mode. It's also the version I'll be reviewing. I wanted to take a look at the craziness and see if this all paid off. I wanted to see if Curt Schilling's passion project really culminated into something great, or if it wasn't worth anybody's time, or the taxpayer dollars of Rhode Island. With that, let's go ahead and take a look at the story.
We knew that it was only a matter of time. Our fate had been written. At least, that is what we believed. Until you died.
The player's journey begins in the Feylands, hearing a voiceover summarizing the major conflict plaguing the region of Amalur. Fate and rebirth are major themes in this game. You'll notice this within the first 15 minutes of playing. We fill the shoes of the Fateless One, a character who mysteriously dies at the beginning of the game and is resurrected despite being a filthy mortal. This is an ability that's supposed to be exclusive to a race known as the Fey, but for some reason our character is able to do this. After selecting one of 4 different races and going through a decent character customizer, you wake with little to no memory of your life, so it's time for the main goal of the game to determine who you are and why you are so important in the grand scheme of fate. The lore in this world is dense. It spans 10,000 years, and you will notice. There's a decent main quest storyline, along with a wide variety of side quests to help fill the player in on the religions, cultures, races, and regions of this world. The narrative was done by American writer R.A. Salvatore, and it shows a lot of effort and thought. I can't honestly say that every bit of lore interested me, but don't worry, there's plenty that did. The more you get into the game, the more it feels like a living, breathing world. As you interact with different people and factions, you realize that Amalur has a vast history, and while some of it comes off as a bit of basic fantasy dribble, overall I'd say it's really good. I found myself slowly becoming more invested in the characters that I was interacting with, despite not really having much of an interest to begin with. The story isn't the highlight of the game, though. That would have to be the gameplay, more specifically the character customization along with the combat. The gameplay loop is what you would expect in an action RPG. You get a main quest at the beginning of the game, you arrive at a new town, receive some side quests, an overwhelming amount of side quests actually. Complete the quests in the order that you so choose and receive XP, gold, or armor as a reward. All of that's pretty stock standard, but Kingdoms of Amalur's combat system manages to be robust but very accessible. The player has the ability to customize their combat preferences basically down to the letter. They can mix and match between roguelike characters, magic-like characters, or warrior-like characters. The actual fighting in the game behaves very much like PS3-era God of War. On first glance, it appears to be a very button-mashy hack-and-slash type game, but the more you play it, the more you realize there's some complexity there. You start to mix and match different abilities and magics, dodge around, and the power fantasy begins to set in.
Now they're dead. I guess it was me you should have impressed. God damn it, I love myself.
There's also a mechanic in this game called Reckoning. Essentially, the higher your combos go and the less damage you take, the more your Reckoning meter will build. Once you activate it, everything slows down, you do more damage, and once you finish tearing ass, you pick one final enemy to use a finishing move on. This will gain you XP depending on how well you do on a button mashing sequence. Looping back to the customization, you'll notice that there's different stats and buffs that you can add to your character, whether it be through leveling up, your armor, or even your weapons. There's a wide variety of stats to choose from: health regen, overall mana, armor buffs, piercing damage. The list goes on, and it's very easy to just go ahead and pick the best things for your particular class, whether it be might, finesse, or your magic abilities. But if you focus on those finer details, you are able to really fine-tune your character and mix and match to this hybrid. I started out the game as a more roguelike character, sneaking around, picking locks, but by the end I was also using a lot more magic. I was more of an archmage. The ability to fine-tune your character with the armor buffs, the different gems you can craft, and the potions you can take really makes the game as complex as you want it to be. The plot thickens even further with the Destiny card system. These Destiny cards are given to you depending on where you are spending your ability points. Once selected, they'll add huge buffs to whatever class you are leaning towards at the time. For example, early on I was playing as a rogue, so I got stats to range damage along with stealth attributes. Late game full-blown abilities get added. Since I was an archmage, I gained the ability to teleport during combat. The majority of your time in this game is going to be spent killing enemies, so you might as well find the best way that you like to play. It's also important to remember to upgrade your core attributes, whether it be speech proficiency, lockpicking, blacksmithing, dispelling, alchemy. There's plenty. Some are more useful than others, though. The ability that gives you cheaper deals at vendors is completely useless on account that the economy's broken in the game. But more on that later. I'd like to cap off the gameplay by talking about the conversation wheel. Yes, you can pick different dialogues for different instances, but honestly, it's more of just moving the story along than you actually making choices. I recall only 3 major decisions that I actually made throughout the game, and they weren't even main quest items, they were faction quests. This is in no way deal-breaking, because like I said, the combat is the highlight of the game, but it's worth mentioning. With all that being said though, it's time to move into the overall presentation.
Students of magic, masters of spells.
Gadflow and his follower.
Graphically, the game's beautiful. By having Todd McFarlane do a very colorful and vibrant art style, it really gave the game some longevity. It's also kind of out of his wheelhouse. He's known for Spawn, and this is definitely not Spawn. I can't sing the same praises for the facial animations in this game, though. I was talking mad shit on Assassin's Creed's stroke face. This game came out 4 years later, went through a remaster, and has way worse stroke face. There's also a lack of distinguishing features for a lot of the character models that you'll encounter. Luckily, this isn't the case with most of the main NPCs you encounter in the main quest, but it doesn't help with the side quests. Pushing forward to the sound design, I'd like to point out a varied quality when it comes to the actual mixing. There's certain instances where you would expect some sounds to be in the front of the mix, but they're not. For example, the soundtrack. Grant Kirkhope composed the music in the game and he did an excellent job, but there's certain instances when I'm in combat and all I hear is combat noises. I can barely hear his soundtrack. This is a shame because the soundtrack's great, it's not mixed very well. It gets blown out by all the other sound design. I can't say it's all bad because every NPC you encounter in this game is voice acted and it's top notch. Now this game is good, it is, it's just there's some lack of polish. It made sense for the game to have some rough edges in 2012. The company who made it did go out of business after all. But after being acquired by THQ Nordic, I really was expecting them to iron out some of these finer details, and they didn't. You're going to encounter some very odd bugs while playing this game, and that's kind of odd considering it's gone through 2 hands now. Some character models will have weird visual hitches like blown out particle effects or floating eyelashes. I also couldn't take some items out of my inventory, and you'll never have to worry about cash because enemies drop expensive items constantly. And speaking of crappy sound design, take a look at this shit.
I've spent most of my life dealing with them, but they aren't like us. Not at the core. They don't know what it means to be a man who sweats to feed his family.
There's nothing I like more when I'm trying to listen to dialogue than having a moaning fucking elf in my ear. I can only be so salty because I really do enjoy this game, and the content is crazy. You are going to get your money's worth with this title. They included the 2 original DLCs that came out with the game back in 2012, The Teeth of Naros and The Legend of Dead Kel, and THQ Nordic came out with a new expansion called Fatesworn to help finish off the story. All these expansions add new armor, mechanics, and characters that you can interact with, and they really help to flesh out the world. I can't say I was fully enjoying my last couple hours of this game, though. I had spent more than enough time in Amalur, and I was feeling like Elaine at the end of The English Patient.
Quit telling your stupid story about the stupid desert and just die already. Die!
Yeah, I was done. God, was I done. I had put just under 90 hours into the game, done 200 side quests, and I was blowing through that last DLC. In the end, Kingdoms of Amalur is a great experience for anyone who enjoys fantasy or RPGs. You should give it a shot. But there are a handful of things holding it back from literally being perfect in my eyes. But they could hypothetically iron all those issues out with a sequel. I never thought this game would ever get a sequel, but I never thought it would get another DLC either. I guess only fate will tell. I fucking hate myself.